Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. Ryan tapped his glass and pointed straight at me. You should cook next time, Lily, right here for us. Everyone looked over like he had just made a toast. My fork froze halfway to my mouth and my smile stuck. I am Lily, 30 years old, and I laughed. I heard myself laugh, bright and wrong in my ears. Inside, something dropped, like I had missed an exam question. At that table, though, I decided to play along. Next to me, my husband Nate just grinned at his plate. Careful what you wish for, man, she burns water. He nudged my arm like this was a running joke I loved. Ryan watched my face instead of laughing with him like usual. That stare felt like a pop quiz I never agreed to. So what do you say, Lily, dinner at your place next? He leaned back, casual on the surface and tight around the eyes. Just you cooking for us, show us what you got. It landed like a dare, not an invitation at all. I heard one person chuckle, then the room dip quiet again. I joked that my oven hates me and we all deserve better. My voice came out bright, like I was auditioning for Cool Wife. My hand stayed under the table, twisting the edge of my napkin. Ryan did not laugh, he looked at Nate like he pitied him. The whole night tilted a few degrees in that second. A man works all week and comes home to take out, huh? He shrugged like it was harmless, like he was just observing life. Back then I still thought maybe I was overreading everything. My cheeks burned anyway, I could feel sweat where my shirt stuck. He smiled slow when he saw that, like he had scored. Here is the thing, I grew up dodging comments like that. You learn to laugh off the first one just to survive. You give them a pass and you give yourself a story. Maybe he is old-fashioned, maybe I am being dramatic tonight. That was exactly how I excused him while my stomach flipped. Nate lifted his drink and tried to lighten it with a joke. Trust me, you do not want her anywhere near raw meat. He laughed again, eyes sliding away from mine to Ryan. Ryan did not even look at him, only at me. I realized the joke was not about cooking, it was about control. Come on, Lily, how hard can it be to follow recipes? His tone was light, the words pressed right into my ribs though. He wanted a reaction that was obvious even to my denial-loving brain. I forced myself to keep smiling and asked whose place we meant. That is when he went for the next layer of the test. Your home, of course, your kitchen with your husband waiting hungry. A real wife knows how to feed her man after work. He tossed that line out like a casual proverb he collected. Someone at the far end laughed, the sound broke off quickly. I felt every eye flick between us, like they were watching sport. My chest tightened and I could feel my heart beat in my throat. But I still smiled because that is what trained women do. We gauge the room, we decide who gets comfort and who does not. I chose comfort for everyone else and discomfort for myself that night. I told him he was welcome over any time, as long as he brought dessert. Ryan's smile flattened for a blink, then he leaned closer. You joke now, but a man can only wait so long for real food. He murmured it low enough that only I and Nate caught it. Nate stared at his plate and chose silence, which somehow hurt more. That was the first night I wondered who in that room actually respected me. Ryan rang our doorbell the next weekend like nothing happened. Nate yelled for me to grab it because his hands were full. When I opened, Ryan pushed past me carrying a plastic bag. Good news, princess, I brought you something simple to practice. He dropped the bag on the counter like a challenge, not a gift. I stared at the meat inside and my stomach flipped hard. There was ground beef with pasta and a cheap jar of sauce. Even you cannot ruin this, just follow directions on the box. I laughed too loudly and asked why he assumed I needed training. The air in the kitchen shifted the second I challenged him. Ryan smiled, then his jaw clenched for a brief beat. Guys break their backs out there and still come home hungry. He looked toward the living room where Nate was moving around. If you keep feeding him junk, he will start eating somewhere else. He framed it as banter but watched my face with open interest. Nate poked his head in and asked what we were talking about. Ryan clapped him on the shoulder and pointed at the groceries. Your girl is finally going to learn some real wife skills. Nate gave that weak chuckle, men use when they want zero friction. I noted who he chose to keep comfortable, and it was not me. Looking back now, that tiny moment did more damage than the dinner. I could have snapped at Ryan and ended it right there. Instead, I studied Nate, waiting for him to push back even slightly. He just rubbed his forehead and asked Ryan if he wanted a drink. That answer told me which battle I would be fight. Ing alone. Later that week, we were at a friend's birthday downtown. People clustered near the bar trading stories about terrible bosses. One woman mentioned her female manager and how strict she was. Ryan rolled his eyes so hard his whole body seemed to follow. I keep telling you guys, power turns women into little dictators. The group laughed nervously, that awkward sound people make when lines get crossed. He launched into examples about women who enforce rules for a living. They get one promotion and suddenly every man is a criminal to them. I watched the women in that circle pull back one by one. I remember thinking, this is not teasing, this is a belief. So you just think women should never be in charge of anything. I kept my tone light, like I was just collecting data from him. He shrugged and took a sip like he had all the time. They can run a home just fine, but jobs should revolve around men. The worst part was how normal that sounded to him in public. On the drive back, Nate kept glancing at me between traffic lights. You know he is just messing around, right? That is his personality. I stared through the windshield and asked if Nate actually believed that. He gripped the wheel tighter and said Ryan liked to provoke reactions. Funny how the only people flinching were women, and somehow that never counted. A few days later, I mentioned a possible promotion over dinner with friends. Before anyone could congratulate me, Ryan leaned forward on his elbows. Better make sure you still have time to cook for this guy. He jerked his chin toward Nate and smirked like we shared some bet. In that instant, my excitement deflated and turned into something sharp. I asked why my job somehow threatened my ability to prepare meals. He blinked like I had misheard him and repeated the question slower. Because a man needs a woman who takes care of the home. He tapped the table with each word like he was dropping truth bombs. The way he watched me reminded me of a hunter waiting for movement. At a sports bar later that month, I watched him corner a server. He insisted on paying for extra drinks if she would smile more. When she turned him down, his expression iced over in an instant. Women these days want traditional men without giving anything traditional back. He muttered it to the guy next to him, not knowing I was right behind. In that moment, the pattern finally clicked like a grim puzzle. Wherever we went together, he recycled the same bitter routine. To him, women blended into helpers and endless comfort on command. Any woman who stepped outside that role was treated like an offender. I wish I could say I walked away then, but I did not. Instead, I kept quiet, collected every nasty little comment like evidence. I watched Nate flinch less and less each time Ryan crossed a line. The more Ryan talked, the more my own house felt like hostile ground. I knew sooner or later he would push the cooking thing again. Next time, I was not planning to just laugh and swallow it. I was the one who invited him over this time. I sent the group text, hit send, and felt my pulse jump. Game night at our place, food already handled, no one cooking. If he wanted to test me again, I wanted him on my turf. When he walked in, his eyes went straight to the kitchen. He whistled under his breath, then glanced at Nate with a grin. So what is she making us tonight, or did you earn a break? I popped the lid off a takeout container and slid it open. Nobody earned anything, I ordered food because I work too. He paused just long enough for the smile to look forced. Must be nice to never worry about taking care of a home. He said it lightly, but his gaze scraped across my face. Nate let out a short laugh and shuffled cards between his hands. I felt my jaw tighten, and I decided not to let it go. So remind me, what exactly do you cook for women you date? I leaned against the counter, casual voice, not casual heartbeat. He blinked like he had not expected the question bounced back. I bring the money, they handle domestic stuff, that is the trade. He shrugged like that was a rule written somewhere official. Our friends drifted in and caught the tail end of that. One woman lifted an eyebrow, but nobody jumped into the conversation. They hovered, checked their phones, pretended to study the snacks. I realized how fast people dodge conflict when it is not about them. It left me alone with him again in my own house. During the first round of cards, he kept tossing little remarks. Back in the day, girlfriends knew how to treat their guy right. Some women forget who pays the bills, then wonder why men stray. Each line aimed at Nate, but angled to hit me straight on. I answered with silence at first, which only fed him. Then he reached across me for a drink and muttered quiet. "You still planning that homemade dinner, or are we too modern?" His breath brushed my ear. Indeed, every muscle in my body locked. I placed my cup down so I would not crush it in my hand. "No, I am planning to order again because that works for us." He leaned back sharply, like I had stepped outside my assigned script. "So Nate comes home exhausted and still has to live on delivery." He dragged out the word exhausted like Nate fought wild animals daily. My eyes flicked to my husband, waiting for even a tiny correction. Nate shuffled the deck harder and pretended to study the cards. "I know some people will judge me for this next part." Instead of defending myself directly, I turned the spotlight on his effort. "Hey Ryan, when your last girlfriend came over, did you cook for her?" The room went quiet in that heavy, expectant way, everyone listening. He laughed once sharp, then his smile dropped fast. "I take women out, I do not play house for them." He tapped his chest, like his presence alone covered everything. I tilted my head, trying to look more curious than angry. "So they earn meals and you earn what exactly? Attention, loyalty." He stared at me like I had stepped over some invisible fence. Nate finally cleared his throat and tossed the deck onto the table. "Can we just play? This is getting weird already." He did not look at me or at Ryan, just at the cards. That tiny act of avoidance felt louder than any insult that night. I swallowed what I wanted to say and sat down anyway. The rest of the evening scraped by with brittle jokes. Whenever I laughed, it came out too bright and too tight. Whenever Ryan spoke, he circled back to women and how they behave. Girls today want equal pay and still expect doors opened for them. He kept checking my reaction like it was part of the entertainment. After everyone left, the apartment finally went quiet enough to think. I started picking up empty cups just to keep my hands busy. Nate leaned against the doorway and watched me for a second. You know how he is, he likes to stir things up with people. That excuse hit harder now that I had heard it too many times. He is not stirring things up, he is insulting me in my own place. I dropped another cup into the trash with more force than needed. "And you are acting like I should be cool with it forever." Nate rubbed his face, then stared at the floor instead of at me. "He does not mean it like that, you know he is old school." Old school, that phrase bounced around my head like a bad joke. Old school is liking vinyl records, not treating women like appliances. My voice came out flat because I was past being playful. He winced at that and finally looked up for real. "I just do not want drama in the group, that is all." There it was, the real fear hiding under all his excuses. He was more worried about rocking friendships than about my dignity. I felt something cold drop into place while I watched his face. If I kept letting this ride, Ryan would not be the only problem. I would start resenting Nate more than the guy trash-talking women. The next day, I tested a different angle without telling Nate. I posted a photo of a meal I had ordered, not cooked. Captioned it with a joke about outsourcing dinner to professionals. Ryan liked it within minutes, then left a comment underneath. "Imagine if wives still knew how to use a stove, wild thought." My chest tightened when I read it, but I did not respond. Instead, I opened his profile and looked at what he shared. Not the general posts, the ones he thought only his friends saw. Clips mocking women who split bills, memes about girlfriends getting replaced. Thread after thread painting women as lazy burdens who never satisfy anyone. Seeing it laid out like that hit me harder than any snide remark. This was not a few tasteless jokes, this was a whole worldview. He saw women as staff, not partners, and he did not even hide it. What scared me most was how normal it probably felt to him. What scared me second most was knowing Nate still called him his closest friend. That night while Nate showered, his phone buzzed on the couch. I did not touch it, but the preview flashed on the screen. Ryan's name at the top, with a small slice of the message visible. Bro, your girl really proud of not cooking, you sure about her? The buzz of rage in my ears drowned out the rest of the room. I stared at that screen until the preview faded into the lock screen. My hands shook not because of the insult but because of the pattern. Behind my back, online, in person, it all lined up now. This was not about one dinner or one joke or one picture. It was a campaign in his head, and I was the target. When Nate came back, I did not mention the notification immediately. I watched him pick up his phone, glance at it, and smirk. Ryan thinks your post is funny, he said, still looking at the screen. My heart sank because I had seen the exact same message framed differently. If he thought that was funny, I needed to know what else he found normal. So I asked, "What did he write exactly? Read it out loud, let me hear it." Nate hesitated, that half second that feels like a whole minute. "He is just being dumb, something about you clowning around with food." That was the moment I realized I did not trust his filter anymore. I did not call him a liar, but I marked that spot in my memory. I knew I would need proof, something undeniable, something outside this house. I could feel a line being drawn, even if no one else noticed. The next time Ryan tried to drag me over that line, I would be ready. On some level, I think he felt that shift too and started pushing harder. My coworker halted mid-bite and stared at my phone. "Hold up, zoom in on that guy right there." Her fork hovered in the air while she leaned closer. On my screen was a photo from game night, with Ryan grinning beside Nate. I already felt my shoulders tense before she even said his name. "You know him personally, right? Not just through social media." She wiped her mouth, eyes still locked on his face. I felt my pulse kick because something in her tone sounded wrong. "Yeah, that is my husband's close friend, why?" I tried to joke, but my voice landed flat and shaky. She dug her phone out fast, like she had been waiting. "Please tell me his name is Ryan and he hangs out with Nate." My gut clenched because she nailed both details without help. When I nodded, her expression shifted from curious to uneasy. "I think he is in a private chat with guys I work with." I watched her unlock her screen with quick, nervous motions. She opened a messaging app, scrolled through a list of groups. "There is this thread with some of the men from my department." Her thumb tapped a title that made my stomach twist on sight. "Pretty sure your guy pops off in there all the time." Messages loaded, and she started searching his username. It appeared right away, same photo, same smug expression. "There, that one, he throws the worst comments in here." She tapped on an older day and scrolled up until my eyes blurred. Then she stopped and turned the phone so I could read. At first it was general trash talk about women at their office. "Chicks just flirt for attention, then cry harassment when you ignore them. Half the girls here act like breathing near them is a crime." The words blurred together, mean and lazy and constant. Even before my name appeared, I felt heat crawling up my neck. She drew in a breath and pointed lower on the screen. "Here, this is the part that freaked me out earlier." I followed her finger and saw Nate's name mentioned in a line. "Got a buddy whose wife refuses to cook, lives off delivery. Guy breaks his back while she plays busy career girl." My heart hammered so hard it felt loud in that break room. I read the sentence again to make sure I was not twisting it. Buddy, wife refuses to cook, lives off delivery, career girl. He had turned my entire life into a punchline for strangers. I remember gripping the table and forcing myself not to shake. It kept going under that message like a drip of poison. "Dude's whipped and does not even see it, kind of pathetic. Next time we hang out, I am pushing her on it hard. Somebody has to show him what a real partner looks like." He added a laughing emoji that made my skin crawl. My coworker glanced at me, guilt all over her face. "I am so sorry, I did not know he was talking about you." She lowered her voice even though the room stayed mostly empty. When I saw that line about cooking and takeout, I connected it. She tapped the screen lightly, like she wanted to scrub his words off. I took the phone and snapped photos of the thread with shaking hands. Part of me felt dirty doing it, like I was snooping. Another part of me whispered that I owed myself proof. I knew if I walked out without receipts, I would doubt everything later. Survival brain won because I kept clicking until my memory filled with screenshots. "What are you going to do with that, if you do not mind sharing?" She watched me slip my own phone into my bag with care. I am going to show Nate because now it is not just my gut. The words tasted bitter, but they steadied me. For once I had something he could not wave away as oversensitive. The rest of my shift dragged while those lines replayed in my head. Every time I tried to focus, that phrase "refuses to cook" flashed again. It was not just that he criticized me, it was the sheer contempt. I felt humiliated in front of people I did not even know. Sitting there, I realized he had never once considered me a person. Driving home, I talked out loud alone like a person losing it. I rehearsed how to bring it up without instantly blowing everything apart. One version had calm logic, one version had yelling, one version had tears. Honestly, I did not trust which one would show up when I walked in. I only knew I could not unsee those messages now. When I got home, Nate was messing with his phone on the couch. My hands were still trembling, so I sat opposite him to feel stable. "We need to talk about something serious, and I want you to listen." He looked up, uneasy right away, because those words never introduce good news. I opened my camera roll and lined up the first screenshot. "I know you think I exaggerate about Ryan, so I want you to read." I handed him my phone and folded my arms to keep from hovering. He squinted, scanned the top part about the office women, shrugged. Then I watched his posture change when he hit the part about his friend. His eyes moved slower, and his jaw tightened the longer he read. "Where did you get this from? Because this is from a private group." He glanced up at me, then back at the phone like it burned. "A coworker showed me today. She recognized him in a picture of ours." I kept my tone steady because I did not want him to derail. "Look at the lines under that, read them out loud." He swallowed and did what I asked, voice low and rough. "Buddy whose wife refuses to cook, lives off delivery. Whipped and does not see it, going to push her next time." His shoulders slumped a little on that last part about pushing me. By the end his face had gone almost gray. "That is you, I do not think you can pretend otherwise now." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, waiting for his defense. For a second he just stared at the floor without speaking. Then he let out a long breath and rubbed his forehead hard. "He talks trash when he is around those guys, it is disgusting." There it was, the word I had wanted and still hated. Disgusting. He finally named it, but there was a delay that stung. "You kept telling me it was just his sense of humor," I said. My voice wobbled, which annoyed me more than anything else. "He goes too far online, especially in those types of chats." Nate scrolled further, even though no part of him wanted more. "Guys brag, they posture, they say things they do not really mean." He sounded exhausted, like he was apologizing for an entire gender. I could hear the conflict in him, but I was done translating. Bragging is him insulting me to your coworker, to strangers. I pointed at the line with my finger, pressing harder than necessary. "He calls me lazy, claims you break yourself while I just enjoy takeout. Then he writes about planning to come at me next time he visits. Explain to me how that is a harmless role play for his buddies." Nate stayed silent long enough that I almost repeated the question. His thumb hovered over the screen, then dropped into his lap. "There is no good explanation, he is being cruel, I know that." He finally looked at me, eyes red at the corners. I should have shut him down the first time he opened his mouth. Anger and relief crashed into each other in my chest. On one hand, he was finally acknowledging the reality in front of us. On the other, none of this erased the weeks of dismissal. You defended him over and over while he built an audience for this. I could hear my own hurt spilling over now, sharp and steady. I was not defending the insults, I was trying to avoid a blow-up. He leaned back, palms open like he wanted me to see his side. "If I cut him off, it splits the group, it gets messy." I laughed once, short and humorless, because there it was again. The messy he feared was apparently worse than my humiliation. "So your discomfort counts more than being publicly trashed as a wife." I hated how bitter I sounded, but I could not soften it. "He is warning your coworkers that I am some useless freeloader at home." If they believed him, what do you think that does to how they see you? I wanted him to feel the weight of that social sabotage too. Nate winced like I had aimed for a bruise and hit it. "I get it, it makes me look weak, it makes you look awful." He paused on that last word, like it hurt him to admit. I did not know it reached my workplace, I swear I did not. His hand shook as he passed my phone back across the cushion. I stared at him, trying to decide what I believed anymore. He might not have known about that specific thread, I accepted that. But he had known the general pattern for a long time. He had just decided it did not outweigh whatever history they shared. That decision sat between us like something heavy and ugly. You realize he wrote that he would push me next time, right? I scrolled and showed him the exact area, made him read again. This is not random venting, he was strategizing, almost proud of it. I thought back to every comment at our place, every jab about dinner. He had been working off a script he practiced with other men. Nate pressed his palms against his eyes and groaned softly. I need to talk to him, this crosses so many lines for me. My stomach flipped because I knew how those talks often went. Soft complaints, nervous laughs, no real consequences, just a reset. I need you to be specific about what you are actually willing to do. He dropped his hands and looked straight at me, finally steady. I am going to confront him, tell him none of that is acceptable. If he doubles down, I am done, I will not keep him around. Hearing that should have calmed me, but something inside stayed braced. I knew how influence worked when men wanted to keep certain bonds. Then start with this, I said, tapping the screen again. Tell him you saw this, that you know exactly what he wrote. Tell him you read how he talked about your marriage like a joke. Do not let him spin it as banter, do not let him minimize. If Nate folded there, I knew exactly where I stood. He nodded slowly, like he was signing a contract he dreaded. I will call him tomorrow, I need time to cool off first. That answer irritated me more than I expected in that moment. I wanted him furious now, not planning a calm chat later. Still, I swallowed it because pushing too hard might backfire. That night in bed, I lay awake while he snored lightly beside me. My mind kept replaying one single line from that thread. Kind of pathetic. Not about me, about Nate, about how he saw his own friend. He did not respect either of us, not even a little. I kept thinking about the men in that chat cracking up with him. They probably did not know my face, but they had a story. The lazy wife, the helpless guy, the big hero friend who speaks truth. I hated that I existed as a character for their entertainment. It made me feel both exposed and strangely invisible at the same time. The next day at work, my coworker slipped into my office quietly. Did you show him? How did that go? Are you okay? I nodded, but my throat felt tight, words stuck behind it. He finally believes me, he says he is going to confront Ryan. Her eyebrows rose, worry and disbelief mixed in one quick look. Be careful with that, guys protect each other in those spaces. She perched on the edge of the chair, hands clasped together. I have heard them backpedal so fast when called out in person. Online they are bold, then suddenly it is all jokes and sarcasm. Her warning matched the fear that had been crawling under my skin. You are not wrong, I admitted, voice quiet but firm. If he goes soft on him again, that tells me everything I need. I realized I was no longer asking whether Ryan could change. I was asking whether Nate would actually choose me over his comfort. That shift scared me more than anything Ryan could ever write. On my lunch break, another notification from her popped up on my phone. More context in case you need it, her message read. She had forwarded additional screenshots from different days in the chat. This time the focus was on wives and girlfriends as a group. Ryan's comments sat in the middle like poison at the center. Women who do not cook should not call themselves partners at all. Men are stupid for marrying girls who treat Uber Eats like a personality. Sometimes I look at my boy's wife and wonder what she brings besides attitude. That last part knocked the breath out of me because there was no doubt. He saw me as nothing but a drain, and he enjoyed broadcasting it. I saved those images to a separate folder, my hands calmer now. It felt less like snooping and more like documenting a crime scene. Not a legal one obviously, but a moral one inside my own home. If Nate ever tried to tell me I imagined any of it, I had proof. For once, gaslighting would not stand a chance against hard evidence. When I walked through the door that evening, Nate was already pacing. He looked up, eyes bloodshot, like he had spent all day thinking. I called him during lunch, he said, voice thin and worn. He laughed at first, then tried to brush it off as just noise. The way he said laughed made my chest tighten again. What did you answer? Did you just let him shrug it away? I dropped my bag and stepped closer, ready for impact. I told him it was not funny, that he crossed a line. He said you were too sensitive, that I was whipped for listening. Nate's mouth twisted on that last word like it physically hurt. I did not interrupt, which felt almost impossible, but I held back. I told him he disrespected you and me both with those messages. He started ranting about soft men and feminism ruining everything. Then Nate went quiet, which made the silence crackle between us. That is when I told him not to come around for a while. For a moment, relief shot through me so fast it made me dizzy. He actually set a boundary, sharper than I expected from him. He called you controlling, accused you of letting your wife run you. Nate's hands balled into fists at his sides as he replayed it. He hung up after that, still laughing, but it sounded fake. I listened, absorbing each word like a slow, painful drip. Part of me was proud of Nate for finally stepping forward. Part of me wondered. Airdwhite took written proof and outside witnesses. I am glad you said something, but this is not over for me. He looked scared when I said that, which told me he understood. I knew there would be another clash eventually, there always is. Men like Ryan do not back off quietly, they double down. I could already imagine him pushing harder if he ever returned. This time, though, I would not be the one cornered and caught off guard. I was done playing along with a test I never agreed to take. His voice reached the hallway before I saw his face. Smells like someone finally used the stove in this place. I froze with a serving spoon in my hand and my back straightened. In that split second, I knew Nate had not told me everything. I turned slowly, already bracing for the look I remembered too well. Ryan stood in our doorway like nothing had changed at all. He clapped Nate on the shoulder, loud and familiar and unbothered. Behind him, two other guys from their group shuffled in, awkward. They avoided my eyes, which told me there had been pregame talk. I realized I was the only one surprised he was standing here. I shot Nate a look over the counter, not hiding the question. He would not hold my gaze, just jammed his keys onto the hook. They wanted everyone together, just for the game, just tonight. His voice sounded thin, like he was already tired of his own explanation. I did not answer because I wanted them both to sweat for a moment. Ryan stepped farther into the kitchen, eyes traveling over the pans. He whistled softly, then gave a slow, exaggerated nod toward Nate. Would you look at that, your woman finally earned her apron. He laughed at his own line, head thrown back like he nailed a punchline. The guys behind him tried a weak chuckle, then went quiet. I could feel my heart beat against my ribs, fast and angry. I had cooked a simple dish that night for my own reasons. Not for him, not as some performance, not as an exam. Hearing him frame it as proof of my worth made my skin crawl. I set the spoon down before I slammed it onto the counter. Careful, Ryan, you are starting early and we just opened the door. I kept my tone even, but there was zero warmth under it. He tilted his head like he owned the room and smiled wider. Just giving you credit, sweetheart, not everyone can learn new tricks. Nate flinched at that word, and I filed that flinch away. Our friends drifted toward the living room, sensing the pressure building. They pretended to adjust the volume, line up drinks, check their phones. Nobody offered to stay in the kitchen with me, which hurt more than expected. It left the three of us in a tight little triangle around the food. I realized this was exactly the stage Ryan had imagined in that chat. So is this all your work, or did you order backup? He tugged open a cabinet without asking, like it belonged to him. I stepped closer, blocking his reach with my body, not with words. You do not touch things in my kitchen without asking first. I heard my own voice and almost did not recognize how steady it sounded. He blinked, surprised I had put a boundary on something so small. There we go, knew we would drag some spice out of you eventually. His eyes flicked to Nate, looking for backup for the usual grin. This time Nate did not smile and the silence stretched. For the first time, Ryan looked slightly off balance. I decided I was done dancing around the real issue. If you are going to stand in this room, we need something clear. I wiped my hands on a towel, more to ground myself than anything else. You do not get to insult me in your little group chats and then eat my food. His mouth actually dropped open for a second, like he lost his script. Nate's shoulders tensed, but he did not jump in to stop me. That gave me just enough courage to keep going forward. I have seen what you write about me and women in general. The word "seen" hit him, I could tell by the way he straightened. That was the first time I watched actual fear flicker in his eyes. He laughed too loudly, the sound bouncing off the cabinets weirdly. Come on, you spying on private threads now, that is kind of creepy. His jaw clenched after the laugh just for a heartbeat, then relaxed. Guys vent, we blow off steam, it is not some grand manifesto. He waved his hand like he was brushing away a bug. You did not just vent, you outlined a plan to come at me. I stepped closer so he could not pretend he misheard. You bragged about pushing me at the next dinner, those were your words. Nate closed his eyes briefly because he knew what came next. Heard you were real proud of the way you described our marriage too. Ryan's nostrils flared, his face shifting from fake amused to irritated. We joke around, you're taking screenshots like it is evidence in court. He looked at Nate again, hoping for rescue, voice getting sharper. This is exactly what I warned you about, women twisting everything for drama. That line did more damage to his standing than anything I could have said. Nate finally spoke, and his tone startled both of us. You called my wife dead weight to strangers, that is not a joke. He planted himself between us a little, shoulders squared, jaw tight. You talked about me like some clueless idiot you needed to rescue. His words landed like punches, even though he never raised a hand. Ryan's gaze snapped to him, shock flickering across his face. Oh, so now you're upset about locker room trash talk. He scoffed, but the sound wobbled at the edges. Thought you had thicker skin than this, man, guess I was wrong. He shifted his weight like he was ready to walk or swing. You wrote that I was too blind to notice how useless she is. Nate's voice cracked once on that sentence, then steadied. You knew the guys at my job would see it and you still hit send. He shook his head, eyes glossed with something like grief. That is not trash talk, that is betrayal, and you know it. The word betrayal made Ryan scoff again, but his eyes avoided mine. He ran a hand over his jaw like he was buying time. Everybody jokes about their relationships in those threads, including you. He pointed a finger at Nate, then swung it toward me. She is the one spying and collecting receipts, and I am the problem. Yes, I cut in sharp, not giving him space to spin. You are the problem when your jokes sound like sincere contempt. I put air quotes around that word with my fingers, so there was no confusion. You are the problem when you test women like we are job candidates. And you are absolutely the problem when you walk into my home and act entitled. His face reddened and his voice dropped lower, rougher. You want praise for cooking once and taking a few screenshots. He gave me a slow up and down look, disrespect written in every movement. Guys put in work every day and nobody claps for breathing. You want me to respect you, then start behaving like a partner, not a guest. Something inside me finally snapped into a clean line. Before, his words always found some old insecurity to hook into. This time, I saw clearly how small and predictable his thinking really was. I actually felt calm, which is weird to admit now. I knew exactly what I wanted to say next. I do not want your respect, Ryan, I want your absence. I pointed toward the door, not dramatic, just final. You are not welcome here, not at my table, not in my life. The room went so quiet I could hear Nate draw a breath. My own heartbeat finally slowed, like my body trusted my mouth again. Ryan let out a short, disbelieving snort, eyes flicking to Nate. You are letting her talk to your oldest friend like that. He took a step closer to Nate, lowering his voice a notch. You know she is isolating you, right? This is classic control behavior. Hearing that word used about me almost made me laugh. Nate did something I did not expect, which still matters to me now. He stepped sideways, lining up with me instead of with Ryan. She is not isolating me, you did that yourself when you trashed her. His voice was not loud, but it did not waver. You made my marriage into content for strangers, that is control. Ryan's mouth twisted, anger breaking through the last thin layer of charm. This is what happens when men listen to feminist brain rot online. He jabbed a finger toward my chest, then yanked it back when Nate moved. First it is respect my career, then kick out your friends, then what? You going to tell him how to breathe next, or just when to show up? He tried to laugh after that, but no one joined him. From the living room, one of the guys cleared his throat nervously. I realized everyone could hear every word, and nobody was stepping in. They looked uncomfortable, but not enough to break their own safety. Again, it came down to the three of us. I turned my body fully toward Nate, not Ryan. This is your choice now, and I am not softening it. You keep him in your circle, he stays out of our house, and I step back. You cut this off, we figure out how to move forward together. It felt brutal to say, but I meant every syllable. Ryan barked a laugh like it was the funniest thing he had ever heard. You are really going to make him pick like some bad reality show. He looked at Nate with open pity, not even pretending anymore. Careful man, you give in now, you will never get control back. The word control hung in the air like a dare. Nate looked from Ryan to me, then down at his own hands. For a second, I saw the old pattern try to come back. The urge to smooth things over, crack a joke, pretend nothing happened. His jaw tightened and I watched him push that instinct down. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded older than I remembered. There is nothing to pick, man, you already chose for me. He looked straight at Rye, and eyes steady for the first time all night. You chose internet points over my relationship, over basic decency. You chose to disrespect the person I share my life with. His throat worked once as he swallowed, but he did not stop. I asked you once to knock it off and you doubled down. I told you not to come around for a while and you show up uninvited. You walk in and start right back where you left off. He shook his head, disappointment shading every word now. I am done pretending this is just your sense of humor. Ryan stared at him like he was trying to compute a foreign language. So you are really throwing away years because she cannot take a joke. He jerked his chin toward me, eyes full of contempt. You are going to regret this when she decides you are not enough either. There was real venom there, and I felt it down to my bones. Nate took a slow breath and stepped closer, closing the gap. If my partner decides I am not enough one day, that is on me. But I am not going to keep someone around who clearly despises her. He pointed toward the doorway, mirroring my gesture from earlier. You need to go, and I mean go for real this time. For a moment, I thought Ryan might dig in and refuse to move. He stood there, chest heaving, hands flexing at his sides. Then he snorted, grabbed his jacket from the back of a chair. Enjoy your leash, man, call me when you remember you are a man. He brushed past me on his way out, close enough to make a point. I met his eyes as he passed, not giving him the flinch he wanted. He held my stare for half a heartbeat, then looked away. The door slammed behind him with more force than necessary. The glasses on the counter rattled, which felt weirdly satisfying. Somewhere inside, a knot I had carried for months loosened. The guys in the living room stared at the doorway, then at us. One of them muttered that they should probably head out too. They gathered their things quickly, mumbling vague goodbyes. Nobody mentioned grabbing food, nobody cracked a joke to light anything. They just left us in a house that suddenly sounded too quiet. When the door clicked shut for the last time, Nate sagged. He pressed his palms to the counter and let out a ragged breath. I know I waited too long to do that, and I am sorry. His voice shook on the apology, which he rarely ever let happen. I leaned against the opposite counter, too drained to step closer. I am angry it took screenshots and witnesses to get here. I did not raise my voice, but the words still hit hard. I am hurt that you ignored my discomfort until it embarrassed you too. Saying it out loud felt like ripping off a bandage slowly. His shoulders jerked once, like each sentence landed with its own weight. I kept thinking he would dial it back if I stayed neutral. He stared at the sink, eyes unfocused, lost in his own mess. I did not want to be the guy who cuts off friends over relationship problems. I told myself you were just clashing personalities, that it would ease up. He forced out a laugh that sounded more like a cough. I shook my head because I had told myself similar stories. We both made excuses for him, the difference is who paid for that. Every time you downplayed it, I felt a little more alone here. I took a breath, steadying my voice before the next part. I need to believe you will not let anyone treat me like that again. He finally turned to face me fully, eyes rimmed with red. You are right to doubt me after how long this dragged on. I cannot undo that, but I can change what happens next. I am blocking his number, leaving that chat, and telling the guys why. That last part surprised me, and it checked something important inside me. You are really going to explain, not just ghost and blame it on busyness. I searched his face, looking for any wobble in that plan. He nodded once, slow, like the decision sat heavy but real. If I sneak away from it, they will keep thinking it is harmless. I want them to understand that line was crossed, no confusion. That answer did not magically heal everything, but it mattered. Accountability told to others is harder to take back later. We stood in that silent kitchen, my food still waiting on the counter. I realized my hands were no longer shaking, just tired. He stepped closer, tentative, like he was asking permission with his feet. Do you want me to leave you alone tonight or stay here with you? He asked it gently, no assumptions, no guilt built into the question. The fact that he actually gave me a choice softened something small. Stay, I said, but listen more than you talk for a while. He nodded, lips pressed together like he knew he deserved that. We ate standing up, both of us too wired to sit. Between bites, I told him how it felt to be turned into content. How humiliating it was knowing strangers shared that twisted version of me. How painful it felt watching I.M. shrug it off his personality for months. He did not interrupt, just listened and wiped his face with his sleeve sometimes. At one point, I admitted something I had not wanted to admit before. There were nights I stared at you and wondered if you agreed with him. Not just laughed along, but actually believed I was some burden. I started rehearsing defenses in my head before you even spoke. He winced so hard at that confession, I almost regretted saying it. I do not see you that way, and I hate that I made room for someone who does. His voice cracked and he did not try to hide it. I thought keeping things light would keep the peace, but it just hurt you. I understand if it takes time before you feel safe in this again. He looked down, fingers tapping the counter in an anxious rhythm. Here is the part where you might expect a tidy wrap-up. Where I announce everything is fixed because one toxic friend is gone. That is not how real life works though, at least not mine. The truth is, the night he left was the night our work started. You do not erase months of small betrayals with one slammed door. Still, that was the first time my partner chose me in front of him. Not in private, not in theory, but with actual consequences attached. He lost a friend who had been around for years, and he still did it. I would be lying if I said that did not change something deep. Trust did not magically return, but it finally had room to grow again. Later, while we washed dishes together, I caught myself watching him. He moved slower than usual, like every motion was a quiet apology. He passed plates to me without expecting a smile, just doing the work. It was such a simple thing, standing side by side at that sink. For once, the silence between us felt like repair instead of distance. I still think about Ryan sometimes, usually when I hear certain phrases. When someone jokes about tradition while staring at a woman's plate. When a guy online rants about standards and modern girls and obligations. I recognize that tone now, that mix of entitlement and contempt. I trust my gut a lot faster, and I do not wait for proof anymore. If you take anything from this, maybe let it be this part. Pay attention to the people who call disrespect humor and expect you to swallow it. Pay attention to the ones who test you with jokes and catalog your reactions. And pay very close attention to who laughs along and who finally steps in. Because the day the laughing stops is usually where the real story begins.